Thank you. So my background is in communication and change leadership, working with a lot of companies, big and small, in the United States. And I stumbled upon Agile about, 9 years ago. And I thought, this is fantastic. All this focus on people and interactions over processes and tools and communication and collaboration. This is fantastic. I love this. So I started using some of the processes in the work that I was doing without calling it Agile, because the businesses I was working with didn't really care. They just wanted it to work in their organizations. And then when I sort of continued my Agile journey in Denmark, I started working more in the Agile space with organizations. So the teams, of course, IT teams, were all for Agile, but on the business side, the management usually were like, communication, collaboration, all that soft, fluffy stuff, yeah. Let's just focus on the processes. We don't need that other stuff. Increased velocity, fewer errors. Let's just get the job done and deliver. Communication stuff, we'll worry about that later. So I kept kind of banging my head against the wall, thinking, okay, how can I convince management that Agile is about the communication and collaboration? This is why it works. This is how we create value in organizations. So I thought, okay, I need to find some research, the facts, the scientific evidence that shows all of this soft, fluffy stuff actually works. And I found it. Agile works because the processes support the reward mechanisms in the brain. So when we work in an Agile way, we are able to help teams find energy and engagement and explore and learn together and improve craftsmanship and have the overview and have autonomy. And those are all the things, the same things that signal reward in our brains. So I found that proof. The neuroscience proves that Agile works. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before I get going here, I want to give a quick little lesson in the brain, how the brain works. And Dave, you mentioned this a little bit yesterday in your keynote. Functional MRIs is the technology that have allowed neuroscientists to actually see where the blood is flowing in the brain. And what that means is we can see what areas of the brain are in use under certain circumstances. So before that, it didn't work so well because it was either on animals or on dead people. So that's not so helpful. So now we can see where the blood is flowing in the brain thanks to functional MRIs. So there are two key regions of the brain that I want to talk about. Of course, there are others, but the two key regions are the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Now, the prefrontal cortex is the thinking area of the brain. This is the part right here, basically, right behind the eyes. And this is the newest part of the brain from an evolutionary standpoint. This is where rational thought, goal-oriented behavior, emotion control, so overriding our emotions, all of that happens here. Creativity, innovation, focus, being organized, that all happens in the prefrontal cortex. The problem with the prefrontal cortex, though, is that it gets tired really, really easily. It's the Goldilocks of the brain. It needs to have everything just right. You can't be too tired. You can't be too hungry. You can't be thirsty. You can't be stressed. Because if you are, the prefrontal cortex stops working. And then the limbic system takes over. So the limbic system is the feeling region of the brain. It's the deep part of the brain. This is where our the urge to fight or run away from danger or freeze in dangerous situations comes into play. It's a survival mechanism that's been perfected over thousands of years. This is why we're here on this planet, because we are really good at getting out of dangerous situations. So what scientists have found is that under certain conditions, if I would say to you, what's your name?
Roy.
Roy. Okay, Roy, can I give you some feedback?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says, yes, go ahead. But what's really happening in his brain is he's thinking, I don't know Jenny, and I don't trust her, and no. Prefrontal cortex is shut down. Scientists have found that the phrase, the question, can I give you some feedback, activates the very same response in the brain to run away when you see a bear in the woods. Exactly the same. The good news is that the prefrontal cortex is able to override this. However, it has to be rested, and we have to be fed and not thirsty and not tired and not stressed. But when we feel a sense of control, the prefrontal cortex is able to override this stress response in the limbic system, allowing us to focus on the work that we need to do. Because when we're thinking active creatures, we need the rational part of our brains to be working optimally. So that's what this talk is all about. The thing is, in most workplaces, including Agile organizations, we don't have as much control as we would like, and that causes a lot of stress. So the biggest stressor in the workplace is too many demands, sounds familiar, and not enough control. So feeling out of control, this causes a lot of stress in the workplace. And what happens when we're under stress is that our performance goes down. So this is the stress performance curve. And on the y-axis, we have prefrontal cortex, that's PFC, prefrontal cortex performance. And at the top of that is where we're focused and organized and creative and innovative and open to new ideas. We're able to get into the flow of the work and find really cool ideas. And on the bottom, we're a little distracted, disorganized. It's hard to focus. Have you experienced this when you're running around all day and then you come home and you're just, and you can't really focus? And so the best thing to do is just to sit on the couch and watch TV, especially some really stupid show where you don't have to focus at all. That's what's happening in our brain. On the y-axis, this is where the stress arousal comes in. So there are two neurotransmitters, they're catecholamines, that have the most effect on our performance. And that's dopamine and norepinephrine. And dopamine, that's D-A-N-E is norepinephrine. These are the two neurotransmitters that indicate reward in our brain and help us get to high performance. So dopamine is also the same neurotransmitter that gets activated when you take cocaine. Not that I've done that, but that's what I've read. So the whole power rush that people get, that's a dopamine rush. So when you all of a sudden feel like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever, that's dopamine shooting up in your brain telling you this is awesome. So we want to have more of that in the workplace. The thing is, most of us are over here, this little yellow X. We're a little past high performance. We're getting down into the stress levels. Too many deliveries, too many pressures from product owners or businesses who don't know what they want. Just a lot of stuff going on that we feel we can't control. And that's where we're stressed. So the research is showing that most people, at least in Western cultures, are overstressed. So too much happening, not enough control. And what happens when teams are not delivering? Hey, we're not on time, right? Crap, we don't have the right specifications. What are we supposed to do? And maybe the product owner is also a little stressed. She's getting pressure from the business. And everybody's running around going, come on, we need to perform. What's the matter? Do you need more people? We have to deliver. We have this deadline. You're over budget. What are you thinking? No, you can't travel and have a face-to-face meeting. No, get the job done. Stay over the weekend. Vacation, forget about it. Okay. If we know that our brains, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking area of the brain, stops functioning when we're under that kind of stress, maybe it's not so clever to push people down into more stress, where they really can't think at all, and all they want to do is run and get out of there, or fight, or just freeze. Just like, okay, I'm done. So what we need to do as Agile leaders, all of us, is to support and encourage. And when we do that, we can push people, our teammates, to high performance. Because the research shows that when we support people, when we encourage them, and this is authentic encouragement, not, oh, way to go, you can do it, but remember the situation you were in before? We did this together, we can do it this time too. Support and encourage to high performance. Now on the other side of this performance curve, every now and then, but not too often, but every now and then, there's a Scrum team who's, they're in their 4-week sprints, and this is pretty easy, and we don't have to think too much, and we just kind of, there's the backlog, we're gonna break this down and go. Maybe they need a little push to high performance. Maybe they're down here and not getting as much as they could, as much creativity or innovation as they could. So maybe a suggestion as a team is to say, hey, why don't we go to 2-week sprints instead? Create a little stress so that we can push up to high performance on the other side of the curve. So we have to have the dopamine and norepinephrine at the right levels to get high performance. And sometimes it's a little push to get there, but most of the time it's support and encourage because we're already overstressed. So remember that when we're overstressed, the prefrontal cortex stops working. And when the prefrontal cortex stops working, we don't have control over our emotions. We can't override all those feelings of anger or frustration or whatever it is in the workplace. And that's when you see behavior that's really hard to deal with. So we want to design our interactions so people can think optimally. And that's what the neuroscience shows that Agile does. All right. So when we are able to understand together and plan together and demonstrate results frequently and get feedback and reflect together to learn and improve, it supports those reward mechanisms in the brain. It shoots dopamine into our brains to allow us to get to high performance. It's one you didn't have yesterday, Dave. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading, using the incredible power of the human mind. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. Our brains are prediction machines. So I loved your sound files yesterday, Dave. That's such a perfect example of how good we are at predicting things. Our brains are constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next. This is why it's so critical to have the overview. And this is why I love working in an Agile way so much. We have master plans, release plans, so we have an overview. It drives me insane when management says, yeah, but Agile, there's never any plans, and you can do whatever you want, and isn't that Agile? No, it's not Agile. Having the overview and doing just-in-time planning on the details, that's Agile. And having that overview helps the mind settle down and be able to focus on, hey, what are we going to do? Where we're going? Why we're going there? And how we can do it in a creative and innovative way. So all that wondering that happens in the workplace about, this new organizational change, I wonder who the boss will be. Oh, now they want to reset the Scrum teams in our organization. I wonder if I still get to work with my teammates. I wonder if I'll be able to get off at 3 o'clock and pick up my child at daycare today. There's a lot of wondering that's happening. And all of that wondering in the workplace takes focus away from optimal thinking. So when we have the overview, when we have certainty about what's going to happen, we can calm down and focus. All right. This is called the toward-away continuum. We're always somewhere on this continuum. Our brains are set up to maximize reward and minimize danger. So the limbic system helps us survive because we want to minimize that danger, no bears in the woods, and maximize reward. That shoots the dopamine. So over on this side, where we're happy and open and creative and focused, this is where the prefrontal cortex is working optimally. Over here, on this side, no, I don't want that feedback. You know, Jenny, you're pretty good at facilitating, but there's some things that you just don't know, and you think you know, and maybe people are crap. And oh, by the way, that screw up you made last week, that keep and try, I don't really agree with the 3 things you guys came up with. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a way to design our interactions with people so that we make them happier, more open, more creative, more curious about the world. On this side of the brain where the prefrontal cortex is working optimally, where I'm willing to take risks, where I don't see negativity around me. Because when we're down here in this not so great state, where our limbic system is trying to just help us survive, we can't think optimally. Our brains are not functioning in the right way. We're strengthening negative connections. When we're in this stress state, fear, afraid, anxious, or just closed to new ideas, we see the world differently. We see more negative around us. In fact, our brains actually change. If we continue to be in a stress state, and what the research shows is you can actually be in a stress state for about 2 weeks, and then you need 2 weeks of recovery time. But if you're in a stress state constantly, over time, your brain physically changes. It's called neuroplasticity. It's the way the brain makes actual physical connections. So you don't just seem more negative or act more negative, you actually are more negative. And for some people who used to see, hey, it's raining, isn't that nice? I don't have to water my plants today. It's so awesome. They're seeing sunshine as the worst thing ever. Rain is bad, everything is bad, everything is bad. And the brain has 5 times more negative connections than positive, so it's really hard to change that. The good news is, though, that you can change it. You can change how your brain is wired. It's that focus on positivity. So when we focus on understanding together and planning together and demonstrating results frequently, getting feedback, reflecting together to learn and improve, not only do we have more energy and engagement and freedom to explore in our teams, we're also able to think better because it allows the prefrontal cortex to open up and have energy to try new things. We are more willing to take risks. We are more willing to accept uncertainty. So how does this tie to Agile ways of working? When we're on this continuum, there are things that motivate us. And what the neuroscience shows is that things like craftsmanship, so pride in the work that we're doing, feeling valued as a person in the work that we're doing, increases dopamine in the brain, which pushes us. So maybe we're in the middle. Craftsmanship pushes us over here. It makes us feel good. We feel valued. Certainty. So having that overview, knowing at least a pretty good idea of what's going to happen next, helps us also to calm down. We can go this way toward the more happy, open, curious, interested, focused part, where we can actually come up with great ideas. So the thing about the brain is, though, control is just an illusion, but it doesn't matter for the brain. The illusion of control is enough. So we know when we make a master plan or a release plan, it will change. We know that. But for the brain, planning for uncertainty creates certainty. Does that make sense? So we're able to focus because we know it's going to change, and that's okay. We're certain it's going to change. That's certainty for the brain. So we need that. We need pride in the work. We need certainty. Autonomy is the next thing. Remember I said that the stressors in the workplace, too many demands, not enough control? We need to have influence in the work that we're doing. So when we plan in an agile way, we're planning together, we are understanding together. We have self-organizing teams who take the work and break it down and decide how it's going to get done. This gives autonomy. And autonomy is a huge influencer into how much dopamine is getting released into our brains, allowing us to think clearly and innovatively, and maybe even have more fun in the workplace. Relatedness is another thing. So working in teams creates a sense of connection with people, and we need that connection. A few months ago, I met a guy, a leader in one of the organizations that I'm working in. Will you play? What's your name?
Darwin.
Darwin. So Darwin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jenny.
Okay, wonderful. Connections, nice, perfect shaking of the hand. I can trust you. You seem like a really sweet guy. This other guy, let's call him Tom. When I met him, he squeezed my hand really hard and looked me like deep in the eyes, like I'm a power guy. And my brain was going, watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. I'm running over here to, I don't like you, I don't like you. You are dangerous to me, I want to get out of here. There's something wrong with you. And knowing what I know about the brain, I thought, okay, come on, Jenny, shh, now stop that, just stop. You just met this guy. You don't know that he's an asshole. Yeah, it didn't take too long to find out that my intuition was actually right. But that gut feeling is our brain recognizing patterns. So it used to be people would say, intuition, gut feeling, that's not very scientific. No, gut feeling is our brain recognizing patterns. It's happening deep in the limbic system, but the limbic system is really great at making those connections and giving you a feeling that this is bad for you so you can run away quick. It's not so good at telling you why this is bad for you. So that takes prefrontal cortex to jump in and say, whoa, let's analyze the situation. Is it really that bad, or is it just your brain recognizing patterns from other assholes you have met who have also shaken your hand in the same way? So that whole relatedness in teams, we need to feel connected to the people that we're working with. We need to feel that trust. And when we feel that trust, our brains can settle down and just relax. We have our tribe, our group who's going to protect us from evil out there in the rest of the world. It's what our brains are telling us. It's what we've been programmed to do over thousands of years. It's a survival mechanism. But that is happening. So focusing on the relationship before the task, and this is a really hard sell to management, I can tell you. Focusing on the relationship before the task allows you to get to the task quicker, and it allows you to come up with more creative solutions to whatever that task is. So relationships are super, super important. And working in teams is obviously a great way to create those relationships. So fairness is another thing. And in Agile, the way we create a backlog and do prioritizations, sometimes a product owner doesn't like us so much. Product owners out there? How many product owners do we have? Yeah, okay. I work in the business a lot, so I'm on your side, I promise. But sometimes product owners get a lot of pressure from business, new priorities. Maybe they need to break into the sprint and say, sorry, got a new number one. Or they don't really like it, at least in the beginning. They don't like that the team say, no, you gotta prioritize. There's only one number one priority, and one number two priority, and one number three priority, and on and on and on. So that creates a sense of fairness too, especially if you're working in larger organizations where you get pressures from different parts of the company to have your backlog. So that fairness also helps the brain settle down. So one more reason, Agile is a fantastic way of working. It supports craftsmanship, it supports certainty, autonomy and influence, that relatedness, and also the fairness that people feel. So, if Agile is so great, why is it often hard to move to Agile ways of working in organizations? It's because change for our brain is novelty. We're suddenly not sure of what's going to happen because we haven't been in this situation before. And a little uncertainty in the brain, the fMRIs, the amygdala, which is in your limbic system, lights up like Las Vegas at night. There's nothing happening in the prefrontal cortex. Something new? Oh, no. I've seen this in action with my dog when he was a puppy. Take him for a walk. The first few times, everything was scary. He's like, oh, no, that's a tree. No, that must be scary. I have to get away from that. Oh, there's a fire hydrant. That's also scary. There's a piece of paper blowing in the wind. That's also scary. So the first time you encounter something, your brain is telling you, watch out. This might be bad. This might be really bad. And our limbic systems are lazy. We don't want to spend energy because the prefrontal cortex takes a lot of energy to think. The limbic system does the opposite. It helps us to conserve that energy so we can survive in dangerous situations. So Dave, yesterday when you had your 2 times 2 and 17 times 24, of course we don't want to take the energy on that. We're not going to figure that out. We'll just wait for you to tell us. That's so much easier. But that's a habit that we're in. So we have a natural resistance to change, and we don't understand why the change. And sometimes, just sometimes, in organizations moving to Agile, not everybody understands why we're doing this. Yeah, it's a great It's a great process. It helps us to deliver faster, usually better. We usually have more fun. But why? Why? What's in it for me as a business? Why should I move to Agile? So when we change, we should do it in the way that we work Agile. So break down the change into smaller chunks. Do just-in-time planning. Do experiments with real end dates and real evaluations. Do a retrospective on the last day of the experiment. This helps our brain to calm down because we're okay with that. It's like, okay, now I'm involved and engaged in this change, so it's okay. It's a little scary, but I've got my people around me, so I feel secure and safe. I'm understanding why we're doing this. I've got the overview. I have some influence here. This will be okay. I'm willing to take this risk. I'm willing to try this. And I know if it's no good, I have the certainty that we'll go back. And I can tell you that I've never had an experiment introducing Agile in this way where people haven't gone on to the next sort of step or process working Agile. Maybe some tweaks. And the average time for implementation is about 3 months. So rather than start with everything all at once, we just take it a piece at a time, one experiment at a time, and implement the change. And what the neuroscience shows is that when we implement change in this way, involve and engage people in the process, that our brains can settle down and accept it. We may not agree with it 100%, but we can accept it, and it helps us to move forward. So, Okay, I've been talking quite a lot, and I want to hear some of your questions around this, and maybe you'll challenge me, see if I can answer from the neuroscience perspective some of your questions about the challenges that you have in your own organizations. And because I know that it takes the brain a little bit of time to switch from listening to talking, I would like you to talk to the people around you, maybe the person sitting next to you or behind you, whatever, just for a minute or so about, what I've been talking about and anything it may be have triggered in your minds. Okay? Well, let's talk first, and then I'll take questions. Okay, fantastic. I so hate interrupting when I hear all the buzz. It's so fantastic. Great. Melissa has a microphone, so if you have a question, maybe raise your hand and either shout it out and I can repeat, or if the microphone can get to you, then that's great.
Hi there. What I'd like is the stress curve that you showed us. I'd like a stress thermometer that you can pop in your mouth any time, and it reports where you are on the curve, so you know whether to push or whether to encourage and support. Can you provide any insights into how we determine where our colleagues are on the curve?
Yeah, outside of the laboratory, you're thinking?
In the workplace, obviously.
Yeah. So, yes. So signs of stress in the workplace. So if you remember the continuum that we're all on, you start to see body language. So maybe people stop challenging things, or they get tired more easily, or maybe they're complaining just a little more than normal, or in the really bad situations, they have headaches and stomach aches, or are taking time off, or whatever. So you can recognize some of the symptoms. But some of the first things that you see are negativity, or not wanting to take risks, take initiative, saying, no, they're always that way. Those are some signs of stress in the workplace. Yeah, body language is your best. And asking, hey, how's it going? You can ask. And people say, oh, I have all this stuff to do, and I can't figure it all out, and how are we gonna finish this? And they're always telling us what to do, and this is so hard. They're probably under a lot of stress. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And then support and encourage. Figure out together how you can change things. And even if you can't change it, just the fact that you're trying to help helps the brain sort of settle and pushes a little out of the stress side, because it increases that feeling of trust and connectedness. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi there. So I'm a product lead at a very kind of high transactional website with lots of kind of payments going for all the time. And sometimes a dev team might put up a fix which breaks something for people. No. in that situation, I'd love to kind of be like, hey, last time we fixed it and it was great, but realistically, you got to fix it there and then and be quite blunt and pragmatic about it. So how do you suggest kind of approaching that situation where you just have to fix it really quickly without too much feedback or...
Yeah, Dave has a point. When you're in that moment, of course, things need to be fixed. But there's something about creating an environment where fewer errors happen. So taking those preventative measures to make the work more efficient, to help people focus on maybe cool stuff more than fixing errors. But that doesn't help you in that situation. In that situation where you haven't sort of created that environment, providing mechanisms that help people focus on cool work, then yes, of course, you need to get in there and support and encourage. Saying, you're realistic, yes, hey, we need to get this done. But the way that you say it and say, you must, thou must, now, drop everything else, do this now. We've got creative thinking teams filled with talented people, at least most do. If we say, look, here's the situation. We've been in this place before. We have to get this done. How can we get it done quickly? So you're giving the power, oh, I hate to say that. You're not giving the power. You're providing the opportunity for them to influence, have autonomy in the situation, so that their brains can focus on the problem and not on you sort of saying, this has to be fixed now, and waiting for you to tell them how to do it, maybe. Because that puts our brain down here. When people come in and tell us what to do, it shuts our prefrontal cortices down. It's like, yeah, okay, that means I don't have to think. I'll just wait for you to tell me what 17 times 24 is. That's fine. So support and encourage, involve and engage them in the process. And that'll shoot the dopamine, and you'll get the result faster and probably a better fix.
Or cocaine.
Sorry?
Cocaine.
Or cocaine.
Or cocaine. Yeah, I'm not going to advocate that. Up there. If you shout out, I'll repeat.
Hello. So you mentioned at the beginning that there's a similarity between the bear attacking your reflex and the feedback reflex. Has there been any kind of research telling whether that's innate or conditioned?
Yes. Okay. So did everyone hear the question? The question was that this "can I give you some feedback" activates the same response system in the brain as seeing a bear in the woods. And is there research this being a sort of innate behavior or a learned behavior? I actually don't know, but what I do know is that it's something that was maybe learned over thousands and thousands of years. So passed on from one DNA set to the next. So, and that happens over thousands of years. So all animals have that survival mechanism. What humans have is the ability to override it. If we have enough sort of control in the prefrontal cortex, we can override it. But it is so deep in us that this is not something that we can change. It is the first natural response that the brain has. The more control you have over your own mind, so mindfulness training, you can actually strengthen those connections in the brain to stop yourself, to think about, well, wait a minute, is this really dangerous? Or am I just seeing this through my old patterns, my old filters, my past experiences? Can I just take myself sort of out and be in the present moment and forget about all the other things that happened to me, whatever, 20 years ago? And focus on, yes, okay? And I want to say one more thing about the feedback thing. So in the beginning, when I first started doing talks at conferences, people would come up to me afterwards and say, oh, Jenni, can I give you some feedback? And I was like, and I'm an introvert, so after being sort of on for an hour, I was like, I just want to go rest. Don't give me any feedback. My poor little brain can't handle that. So I thought, no, this isn't very, sort of professional of me to walk around and say, no, feedback, no. No, I'm really good, so no. no feedback. So I overrode that, and my mechanism was to say, yes, please. And then I'd get the feedback, and sometimes, okay, in the beginning, my brain was pretty much, not listening so much. Then they finished, and I said, thank you for your feedback. And in the beginning, I really did not mean it. I didn't. But over time, just saying, and in any situation, thank you for your feedback, strengthen that connection that I actually am thankful for the feedback. So I like getting feedback. And the more frequent you get feedback, the more specific to the task and fast, the better your brains like it. So we can condition ourselves to actually override that wanting to run away from something like that. Yeah.
It strikes me that some people are kind of more sensitive to stress than others. And so I wonder, when you build a team, is it good to have a mix of people in the team or to have people the same? Because you were saying about like adjusting sprint sizes to de-stress the team, but if you've got a mix in the team,
Yep.
maybe those team approaches wouldn't help.
Yep. Yes, people are, there are some people who are more sensitive to stress than others. They've actually marked there's a gene marker for stress that we sense more threat, basically. Some people sense more threat in the world than others. I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people, actually. And I'm married to one who does not have that gene, I'm also certain of. So what I can tell you is that when it comes to teams, the more diversity we have, the better the solutions. So we need to be able to challenge each other. And so no matter where we're at, if certain people can handle stress better or are more risk takers or happier, more optimistic as a go-to attitude, mixing the teams, having that diversity helps everyone else. So maybe the overly optimistic people get a little closer to reality. And the overly stressed people can calm down because they're surrounded maybe by others who are not as stressed or who can handle stress. So we learn from each other. We have these mirror neurons where we can see how other people act in situations, and we then mirror what they do. So having that mix is really good. I'm not a big believer in groupthink that sometimes happens in a team, and I think having the diversity, and sometimes you need some mechanisms actually. So one of the techniques that we use in discussions is to have a red card, and whoever has the red card in some sort of workshop or discussion about what's going to happen in the next sprint or whatever it is, the red card person has to disagree and be negative no matter what. And that allows then that stuff to get out, so maybe the overly optimistic people don't sort of take over and suddenly you get a solution that actually wasn't as good as it could have been. So diversity is really great, and you influence each other. Yeah, there are a couple back there.
Jenni, I can see how and why in the workplace we should reduce the stress on the teams, but what about the stresses that we all bring into the workplace with us? From our significant other, from the fact that the train is late, we're in a rush, and we've built up a stress level before we even arrive in the workplace.
Yep.
What can we do about that?
Yes. Yeah, so in the brain, stress is stress. It doesn't matter whether it comes from the workplace or comes from your drive to work. So what you can do is train your brain. And I have practiced this. So I used to be, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a cartoon where I think it's maybe Bugs Bunny even. Bugs Bunny is this nice family dad or whatever, and then he gets into the car and horns grow. And suddenly, nobody's cutting me off. And I was that person. I was always like behind, and I needed to get there fast, and total stress. I could feel the anxiety in my body. Somebody would cut me off. No way, you are so not gonna get in front of me again. That is not gonna happen. Driving around. Maybe the dishwasher didn't get emptied. Doesn't anyone in this house know where the dishes go besides me? And then, hey, I didn't get my cup of coffee. I had to have instant coffee today. Oh my God. Don't they know that instant coffee? I mean, come on, when does the cappuccino place open? And you're already stressed when you get to work. And it's really hard then. Somebody will say, oh, hi, Jenny, how's it going? Not very good. So we're stressed. So the supporting and encouraging saying, meeting someone sort of where they're at on that continuum, when they come to the office, you pretty much know if they had a good morning or not. To think, okay, empathize. So, I can see that, hey, this wasn't so great. What happened? Oh yeah, that's really not so nice. But I'll buy you a coffee as soon as the place opens. So just giving that support, maybe reframing the situation. I had a situation with my dad, just a quick story. So this whole kind of negative stress thing, how we see the world. He was visiting me in Copenhagen, and at the airport, he bought a new wallet, and he was taking his money out, and then of his old wallet and putting it back in his new wallet. And in the process, he left some euro, actually. It was euro on the counter where he was making this exchange. And he called me and he told me, it was so bad. I bought this new wallet and then I left 20 euro on the counter, and how stupid am I? This was so dumb. I can't believe I could have done that. And in my brain, I'm thinking, 20 euro, no big deal. But for my dad, it was a big deal. So meeting him where he's at, oh, Dad, that's not so nice. We all make mistakes like that. So empathizing and not trying to fix it for him, but then reframing. And then I said, Dad, the person that found that money, they couldn't really give it back to you because, there's no name or anything on the money. You probably made their day. And then for my dad, I said, maybe you even made their week. And a few weeks later, I heard my dad tell this story. And my dad, this is where I get my negative DNA from. And I heard my dad tell this story. And he told it, and then he said, yeah, and you know what? I made somebody's day. Whoever found that money, I made their, and he was smiling. I was like, yes, all this brain stuff, this works. So meeting people where they're at and then reframing is a really good way to help people through that, get over the crap that happened on their way to work or last night. I mean, of course, there's some situations that, you're not going to reframe war in the world. So, but the normal sort of everyday stressors, you can reframe. Yeah.
Hi. So going back to your point about the teams and keeping the tribe effect, how do you avoid the us and them effect? If you keep rather solid teams for a long time, you end up with this us and them effect. How do you either get around that or, I don't know, try and dissipate that so that you don't end up with us and them and only tribe leaders talking to each other and then Chinese whispers?
Yeah, so the short answer is cross-team collaboration, expanding the tribe. Because we automatically characterize people as on our team or not on our team. It's just what the brain does. So the best way to get around that is to open up the team. And what the research shows is that our little brains can handle about 150 people in our tribe. So, and for most organizations, interestingly enough, the ones that are working super, super well have right around 150 people, because after that it becomes really difficult, and you do get that. So it's a lot about how the culture is set up in the organization. Yeah. Yeah.
We talk a lot about people not being able to handle stress, but every now and then we come across people who handle stress better than the average team.
Yep.
But unfortunately perceived as
Okay, so the question was that some people can handle more stress, but sometimes those people in the team are perceived to be not as tuned in as the rest. So, but are they tuned in? Okay, so what's happened? They are tuned in. Are they ignoring the stress, or how are they handling it? Okay, so they're calm and they're handling it inside them. Is that right? Yeah. I would challenge that. It could be that they're in that freeze state, because most people who are able to handle stress are also able to sort of affect others and not add to other people's stress. So we perceive those who are able to handle it as, Dot, you said this last night, radiators of calmness. And when you're a radiator, people don't think that you're not sort of in tune. But I don't know the situation. You can train your brain to take on more stress. You can do that. Just it's a muscle like any other. So it could be they've done a lot of mindfulness or something that has allowed them. But usually people are not then viewed as out of touch or not in tune. Yeah. I think we have time for maybe one more. Yeah? You bet. Okay, so if I heard the question right, as the team gets more comfortable and more confident together, they're able to give feedback back to management about whatever, and that don't managers then have the same sort of stress response or response to the feedback. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yes, of course. Managers are humans. Most of them, anyway. So they have exactly the same stress response. And sometimes when I'm working with teams, they say, oh, our manager, he never gets it, and always doing the same thing. And I'm like, okay, but what if you helped your manager? Because maybe your manager is not as smart as you think he is. So, and maybe he's not as good as handling feedback. It might lower his status. He may think, oh, I'm a terrible manager if they're telling me I'm not so good. So getting him used to a new habit of feedback and saying, look, we have this culture of continuous improvement, this way of working, and part of that is we are also now going to give you feedback. And it's not about you, it's about maybe there are some ideas on how we could do things better. And you could even start with how we could do things better together. Take it in baby steps with the managers, because status is a big motivator in the workplace, and when you give feedback, you're basically challenging their status as a good leader or whatever it is. So take it in baby steps, but there's a way to get managers used to it too. Yes? Yeah. Okay. One more question, and then I'll kind of wrap things up. Yeah.
Sorry. Are some people just inherently toxic, though? Is this something you can deal with in this way? I mean, some people just seem to generate stress around them or for other people.
Yes.
How do you deal with them?
You get rid of them.
Okay.
That's the easy answer. It takes a long, long, long time to get a toxic person. If the entire team is toxic, either get rid of the team or switch them up. And the best way to do it is to have at least 5 times as many positive members as toxic members, and then give it about 2 years, and then the positive connections will grow in that toxic person's brain. So that at least is what the research shows, because you can change those connections and make them more positive. But you have to be around people who can help you do that. You also have to, at some point, have the desire yourself to see things in a different way. Some people are so far down in that negative spiral, they've had it for years and years and years, that it's really difficult. Drugs, psychologists, making them experts, so they're actually not part of the team, are ways to deal with it. But yeah, Yeah, it's not for amateurs, right? But having more positive members than not so positive is one way. Yeah. Okay. So I want to just wrap things up. Thanks for your questions. I so love them, and it challenges me, so that's great. I like that. When leaders can create agile leaders and agile teams, I think everybody that works agile is a leader. So that's my definition of leader. When agile leaders can create these environments where we have mechanisms to help people adapt new behaviors, nudge them into new ways of working, where we provide the overview, we have clarity about the work that we're doing, we have influence on it, we're pretty sure about what's going to happen, at least in the next sprint. We know what's going to happen in the next sprint. When we do all of those things, we can then create places where we understand together and plan together and demonstrate results and get feedback and reflect together to learn and improve. And when we do all of those things over and over again, it becomes deeply embedded in our brains. It's a new habit. It goes into our limbic systems where we don't have to think about those processes. We can think about other cool innovative solutions. When we do all of those things, we are agile. And that is what being agile is all about.